that even if I didn't like it now, God would make me like it. And like, I didn't realize it at the time, but I think why it bothered me so much is because people were telling me that the way God made me and the person God made me was not good enough for heaven. Not my sin, but who God made me wasn't good enough. And so God would have to change me. My name is Elijah, and I have seen God's love despite the shortcomings of the church.
Elijah, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Wenatchee, Washington State.
Nice. What was your family like? Did you grow up going to church?
Yeah, I grew up going to a small Baptist church, and whole family went there. All my family that lived in Wenatchee, cousins, grandparents, mom, dad, sisters.
What are some of your earliest memories of going to church?
Uh, I did not like church. Um, the church I went to was very, I mean, God's done a lot of good there, but also the church I went to was very classic, legalistic Baptist. Just like kind of what you'd imagine when you hear Baptist, the stereotypes that follow that were there. And the one of the things I hated most was how they talked about what heaven was going to be like. Um, I'm tone deaf and don't really like singing or dancing. And I was told that heaven was going to be just uh, standing there singing all day long. And then I was told, even if you don't like it, you will like it then. Um, and yeah, I hated that. And also, anytime you asked a question at a church, like if it wasn't, if it was a challenging question to answer, they would get mad. They did not like that.
Did you ever ask any challenging questions in church?
Yeah, yeah. I was pretty young, but would just ask questions like, why did God let uh, Cain kill Abel or something like that? And they'd be like, no, 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 don't ask that question. And I'm like, little kid sitting there like, but he killed his brother. Why would God let that happen? And they'd just be like, nope, that's a dumb question. Don't answer. Don't ask that.
So why did you keep going to church as a kid then? Was it kind of something your family made you do, or was that your own choice?
I think it was definitely something my family made me do, but I also that was the only time I got to hang out with friends aside from my neighbors. So,
Um, as you got older and church became more of your own choice, what kept you going?
uh, I think it was community for sure. And at one point in my childhood, I was so angry with the church that reflected on God. And I didn't understand that I was angry with the church and not at God. And so I used to tell people that I was going to go to hell. Um, and I was going to take all my friends with me so we could party. And there's a lot of bitterness in that just because I was frustrated with these expectations of heaven and like people telling me that I needed to be happy about wanting to pray, sing worship songs for eternity. And um, also people telling me that even if I didn't like it now, God would make me like it. And like, I didn't realize it at the time, but I think why it bothered me so much is because people were telling me that the way God made me and the person God made me was not good enough for heaven. Not my sin, but who God made me wasn't good enough. And so God would have to change me. But then I think like what really changed all that was one day I wasn't yet asleep, but I was in bed, lying in bed, about to fall asleep, and I got this image in my head of Jesus and I surfing. Um, and I think what it did was just totally change my perspective. It's like, God's about fun. He made fun. He wouldn't end fun because we go to heaven. And I was all about fun. I mean, I was a little kid, you know? Like, I don't want to just, I could barely sit 10 minutes in church without moving. Actually, probably not even 10, probably not even 5. And like, Jesus was just changing my perspective. And that's how he's always done it. And that's what's kept me in church, just because God, Jesus, is always changing my perspective of him and redefining what the church expects me to believe about God. He's redefining that for me, and showing me who he truly is, not just telling me to rely on what people say.
You mentioned earlier about confusing like shortcomings of the church with God's character. What are some of the specific things that you saw in the church that reflected poorly on God in your perspective?
So grew up, I went to 3 different churches for a decent amount of time. First, it was the Baptist church. And what that church told me God was like, and I viewed God based on the leaders at the church. And by leaders, I mean like Sunday school teachers, pastors, and elders, and deacons. So not just the pastors. But I saw just a lot of rigidness and people unwilling to explore or unwilling to let other people believe different and question and be curious. And so I just saw God at one point as just old and bitter, and it made me bitter. It made me angry and bitter with people and the church and God. And then from there, God healed me through that, through showing me how he can have fun. Just that image of surfing, which is funny because I've never surfed, but I mean, snowboarder, longboarder, you know, and yeah. And then the next church, the pastor, he got caught watching pornography, and the whole church just split in half, because the other pastor, the secondary pastor or whatever his title was becoming very toxic and power hungry, and one half of the church was on his side and the other half of the church was on the other pastor's side, saying he's wrong but we need to have more grace, and it just got really tense, and then all of a sudden everyone left but my family. And I remember walking down the hallway where there was Sunday school, and it was just empty. No one was there, nothing, just dead silence. And I just felt abandoned, by my Sunday school teachers, by my pastors, because both left. And I just put that on God. And I mistook the silence of the church for the silence of God. And I used to, for years, I would just pray like, God, why are you gone? What happened? Why do you leave me? And then And then what happened is he just showed me that just over time, it wasn't anything, it wasn't so abrupt like the first time. He didn't give me an image of healing, but he just brought me to a new church where I found community and friends. And I realized that it wasn't God who left, it was just people, and people who ended up coming back into my life. And I think one of the biggest things that showed God's presence, um, and showed me that he never truly left, was looking back and seeing how he was working in my family. Um, because looking back, there's a period in that time where I felt God leave most. I also saw God leave my family most. And then all of a sudden, my mom started reading her Bible like never before. She was reading it daily for hours on end. And I just saw that like reflect in the rest of the family slowly. And I just saw how much God had worked. And it made me realize that like, just because I don't see people and church leaders doesn't mean that God's invisible. God is gone. And God's always working. And then the next church I went to, I mean, like God used that church so much in my life for so many positives, but I had a lot of difficult relational issues with people at that church, leadership there. I was always looking for a more present father, emotionally and physically, but primarily emotionally. I mean, my dad was around a good amount, but just more emotionally and spiritually present, I would say. And I couldn't find that in my dad, so I started looking for that in church leaders. And, um, well, it didn't end up working out. I started interning at the church, hoping I could find that there. And time again, I was just ignored and pushed to the side. And when I would try and be genuine, I was, um, I was just bothersome. I was a bad person. I was judged, and I would try and be honest. And then when I was trying to be fake and show them like, hey, I'm good. I love God and I'm doing all the right things. I just wasn't good enough. And um, then I just sat like, I would say my junior year, I realized what had been shaping my relationships and what I was hoping from my relationships and what I didn't receive from my relationships. And I was trying to reconcile that. And then my senior year, I just, again, it wasn't anything crazy. I just asked God, like, please show me what it is to be a father. Because I can't see it in any men I see. And I need a father figure right now. And I would say it hasn't been like this crazy transformation, but God has been just slowly changing my perspective of him and slowly showing me how he is a father and how he is there. And first he showed it in fun. He showed that we can have fun together. It's not just about worshiping him. And then he showed it in the fact that he's always there for me. And then my senior year, he showed it just in the freedom I can have from letting go. And then after that, I graduated, and he showed me how he can be a father and just relying on him. My parents moved to Texas, and I was in Washington. I still had family around. I had my grandparents, but living on my own and really far from my parents, lost a lot of community just because I was making stupid decisions. And uh, God, God just provided again and again, and He just showed me that through physical provision that He is a father, and also through spiritual care, He showed me He is a father. And then, uh, yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, you're talking about God being a father and you like seeking for that through other older men in your life. But I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of bad experiences with older men not having good leadership over you, like being ignored in church. I know you told me before that you were almost abused by a mentor. So maybe talk about like, yeah, maybe that, or just what they did that gave you specific things in your mind that you saw that you put on God that weren't actually on God.
Um, Back to the curiosity thing. I mean, that just kind of falls through church. Um, I saw, and this one was hard to reconcile because I had already put this on God before of lacking curiosity, um, and seeing curiosity as bad. But I asked my pastor, or I was talking to my pastor about this theological theory. I don't even remember what it was. And he looked at me with complete disgust, and was like, why would you ever say something like that and ask that? And so I just saw God, and I was like, yeah, you don't, you don't like questions. You don't like curiosity. You just want me to read the Bible, and that's it. Just go off everyone's teachings. And another thing was God wasn't gracious. Uh, Another pastor, I was struggling with suicide, and I used that to. I was talking to another student in the youth group, and um, it probably wasn't the wisest thing, the way I communicated it, but I was talking to her and trying to encourage her, and just show her how God had been working. And then after that conversation, I went to talk to my pastor about it. And he looked at me dead in the face and said, why in the world would you ever talk to another student about that? And rather than celebrating how God can use my struggles, and rather than how, mourning my struggles, he decided to reprimand me. And so I just saw God as lacking grace and understanding, and also, again, lacking the curious nature to ask questions and clarifying questions like, okay, what did you actually say? Why are you struggling with XYZ? Why is blah, blah, blah? And why are you thinking this? And rather than just trying to understand me, just wanting to put me in a box and put me to the side. Um, and so I just saw God as like the father who is worried about performance more than anything, more than knowing.
What would you say if you just had to pick one attribute of God? Just think of like all of his character qualities. Which one is the hardest for you to believe?
Um, I think I would say that he is the he is intentional in my life and isn't just um, waiting to see me perform well. I don't know which characteristic exactly that would be. Maybe I want to say being loving because you could say that's a form of love. Um, it's not God's perfect love, but um, maybe just truly believing that God is a caring father.
Yeah. Um, Despite all of the shortcomings of the church that you've experienced, now that you're an adult, what has kept pulling you back to the church? Because you still go to a church now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is it about, what desire in you has kept drawing you to the church, or what is it about God that's made you want to find a church?
Um, well, I know that despite the shortcomings of the church, God has also used the church greatly in my life. Um, I mean, even people who've hurt me the most have also been some of the best influences. Um, and I think that my desire for going to the church is to find God because I've found God most in the church and seen God work most in the church. And I truly want, I want a relationship with God more than anything. And I want to believe God is caring and God is loving and God is good. And I pray all the time for that. And I think that when my belief has been strongest, has been honestly belief about God's caring attributes has been after the most hurtful things from the church. And God just used them to show me that He was there. Like when um, when I would ask when I asked my pastor um, that question, a song came on, uh, a worship song came on in the church, and it was just talking about um, how God listens and how uh, God wants to know me, and it was perfect timing because I was just feeling like God doesn't care, um, and yeah, that hurt came and happened in the church, but it wasn't the church that hurt me. It was a person in the church that hurt me. And I mean, you get hurt every day. We're all sinners. We hurt each other. And
Yeah. Speaking of that, like, how do you How is it possible that church leaders, some of the people that are supposed to be closest to God, could inflict so much hurt on someone? How does that make sense?
I think because, like, just because of their position, our expectations of them are more than anyone else. Like, I I don't wouldn't go into a conversation with someone that I don't know super well and be as vulnerable with them as I would be with a pastor, because my expectations about a pastor are different. At least were different. Um, and I think that a lot of my issues is that I shouldn't have been so trusting of people before I got to know them, just because their label is a pastor. And I mean, anytime a leader hurts you, it feels more effect. There feels like it feels worse.
Mm. Do you feel like our expectations of pastors should be higher than other people that you might meet?
I don't know. Um, if so, then my expectations right now are not where they should be. um, I, don't- I don't think so. I mean, just because they're a pastor, they're still a person. And I think that doesn't mean to say that they shouldn't be like, I think our expectations should be higher, or maybe not I don't know how to phrase it or how to put it, but I feel like our expectations should be higher because they're put in a place of authority, and when they do hurt people, it hurts. Um, it hurts a lot. And anytime someone hurts you, it hurts a lot. But just like when a parent hurts their kid, like they can say the smallest thing and it be way more harmful than a friend saying it. And I think because of that, there should be higher expectations, but we should also be guarding our hearts, and be acknowledge the fact that they're still human and they still sin, and we need to have grace, and we need to be forgiving.
Where do you think forgiveness comes into play when it comes to church hurt?
Um, I think forgiving and forgetting is a really bad saying, especially in church hurt, because then you're just going to get hurt again and again and again. And that's what happened to me in high school. I'd forgive, and then I'd forget, and then I'd get hurt again. And I think forgiving and setting boundaries is good. Um, some of the leaders in those churches, I'm never going to put them in a position where they can hurt me in the same way again, because I can't trust them to keep me safe. And some of those pastors I will give more leniency, because they also prove to be more what's the word? They are not just some of those pastors didn't just hurt me, but also were really good influences, and so I'll give them more leniency or have less boundaries with them. But I think still, like, you can forgive but still guard your heart. You can forgive and still set boundaries, and that's not wrong.
What are some ways that you have both forgiven and set up boundaries and guard your heart?
Well, forgiving is just like not expecting anything from them. Like, and what I mean by that is I I don't want I don't need my pastors or these people to come to and say to me, "Hey, I was wrong," and I don't need to see them hurt because of them wronging me. Um, I don't need that. I don't need anything from them. And as far as boundaries go, I mean, one boundary for one of those churches is I don't listen to their sermons, because a lot of their teachings are a lot of what hurt me. And um, for some of those individuals, I just I don't have longer conversations than, hey, and walk by if I see them again. Um, and some of those individuals I don't talk to at all. Um, and for one of them, I'm a lot closer with. There's just certain things I'm really careful about communicating, and um, and how I communicate it too, so that there isn't a misunderstanding. Because um, a lot of with one of them in particular, a lot of the struggle came from me communicating poorly and him not asking follow-up questions and just assuming.
Yeah. How would you say you've seen God's faithfulness in your life throughout all of the hurt from the church?
Um, I mean, just feelings like just little things here and there. I can't recall them all, but it would be like just a warming. Um, just feel. It's almost like sometimes it'd almost feel like God was hugging my soul. Um, and other times it would just be a specific song and the lyrics just were exactly what I needed. Or other times it would be someone saying a word of encouragement. And like one example would be there's this I had this small group leader um, who I didn't see him as a father figure because he was pretty young. I think he was like 22, but a lot of the times I would get hurt, and then by leadership in the church, and then he'd show up. Um, I'd just see him randomly, like around town, and he'd just ask me how I'm doing, and we'd start talking, and he would just see me. And so a lot of times it was just other people who didn't fit what I wanted, wasn't the father figure, but was what I needed, nonetheless.
How have you seen God's faithfulness fill in the gaps where other people have come short in your life? Or his love, I guess is a better way to say it.
Yeah. I mean, I've God's I feel like the way God has communicated with me most has been just images that he gives me and that tell a whole story and that I can learn from. And like one of them was Jesus and I surfing, and that's always just been a place of encouragement. And another one was God just holding me. And another image was God putting his hands on my shoulders and looking at me without me looking up. We were looking eye to eye, and that one was huge because it was in the midst of me having this idea that he was above me and away from me and not present and not caring, and he got on my level and looked at me eye to eye. It was like, I didn't hear anything. It was just an image, but you know what God's saying in that moment. It's, I'm here for you. I'm with you. I'm walking beside you.
Yeah. That's literally what Jesus did. He came down and got on our level.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool. What message would you give to other people who are maybe experiencing some of the same hurts that you have? Maybe they've been hurt by leaders in the church and are really turned away from wanting to go to church, or have bad views of God because of that hurt.
Yeah. Well, first I would say is start with forgiveness, because you can't have healing without forgiveness. And forgiveness isn't easy. And also understand that you can't force it. It comes with time. And also know that you can forgive but still be infuriated. Like, sometimes I hear what's happening at my church, the church I went to in high school back home, and it makes me infuriated. But I don't need anything from them. I used to have these daydreams. And either sometimes it would be like, this church really valued famous people, rich people, and important, influential people. And so sometimes I'd have these daydreams like, oh, one day I'm going to be rich and I'm going to call them out. And that was because I needed something from them. I needed them to acknowledge me. But I don't need that anymore. But that doesn't mean it doesn't make me mad. And I would also say, like, guard your heart. Like, forgiveness doesn't mean you stop guarding your heart. And take your time too. Like, there have been times when I walk into a church and like I'd be going to this church for a couple of weeks, and they say one thing and I feel like I'm gonna have a panic attack. And it's like certain things can just be really painful, and so take your time. If you have to leave, leave. If you can't go, don't go, and don't worry about what people are going to think, because people are going to think bad things. So what? If you're close friends, that sucks, but try explaining it to them, because I know people care, and if people hear that and know why, they'll be understanding. And then also, like, just be really intentional about the church you find. If there's things that are really scary to you, go to another church, even if it means that you go to a church that you would normally not pick. But if you feel safe there, that's most important.
What would you tell them about who God is in the midst of their church hurt?
God is good, and God is present, and God's with you. Sometimes you can't see God because you're too focused on what your problems, but God is there. And that's been a lot of my struggle, has been not feeling God. And I think you just have to have faith. And it's not easy, but faith isn't easy. And just remember that someday you're going to look back and be like, oh, that's what God was doing. That's where he was. And also try and remember other times that he has already been there for you, because he has, and that'll give you so much encouragement.
Sweet.
Sweet.
Anything else you want to share?
I think that's it.